lockup because they don't, like Judge said, we can't lock up every child. And then, because we just have the 4 beds. Montgomery has 52 beds, which that's their county too, and they contract out to the different counties. They are at capacity most of the time, and sometimes we can't even overload. It's that bad. But I shared with someone earlier, if I don't have a job in Autauga County, it will not be because of the lack of clientele. Because we have juveniles delinquency, and then some of them, it'll just break your heart. And Judge deals more with the dependency, and like I shared, we all don't have to supervise them, but I still go to court and watch, and those will break your heart.
Well, unfortunately, Tammy sees a lot of children that commit crimes, and they end up being with her, but in reality, this same child either hasn't had a family, or has been in DHR custody, or has all these other issues, and the child's already known to the court as a dependent child for those reasons. And then Tammy will end up getting them, so she comes to dependent court just to check on how her kids are doing.
That's right. My husband, when I first started to work as a juvenile probation officer almost 24 years ago, one of the first things he told me was, don't be bringing any of them home with you. So I've never done that, but there's been some times that I wanted to, because over the years, it bothers me to see a child in handcuffs. I cannot, it still gets to me, because I think that could be my child, or it could have been me, but it just bothers me to see a child in handcuffs. And when I first started, I would leave the room when the handcuffs came out. And they teased me about it. I've gotten a little
Tammy,
tougher.
what's the youngest juvenile y'all ever had to lock up? Now, I know juveniles get in trouble and juveniles get on probation, but what is the youngest one y'all ever had to actually lock up?
An 8-year-old.
Oh, my goodness.
And believe it or not, he's the one that stole the Prattville Police Department, the police car, and wrecked it.
Oh my
He actually, it was, I think, the chief's car. He ran it into a tree. And then there was another 8-year-old we had, and this is a sad situation. His father was on oxygen and was in ill health, and I guess the little boy was angry that his daddy was dying, and he tried to cut his oxygen tank, cut his line of the oxygen, and we had to take that child out of the home that night. That was a very hard case to do, because he was not doing it to kill his father, he was just hurting so bad. That's the youngest, both of them were 8.
Most of them that we see, though, are teenagers. I mean, it's, they're teenagers, and it is inevitably always a juvenile that causes the most problems with being locked up. Just this week, Tammy, just this week, we had a 13-year-old who, and after they do get locked up, then we have to see them within 72 hours to decide, will this child stay locked up or will they go home pending their court day? And so we had one that we're seeing to decide whether they'll stay locked up or go home. We have this hearing, and this child was going back to detention. And he lost it. And the officers carried him to a side room, because I'm trying to call the next case, and you can hear in this side room, and he's got handcuffs on, but you can hear the table falling over, banging up against the wall. And finally, I knew the officers wanted to just get him out of there. And then 2 officers transporting a 13-year-old to Montgomery had to pull over on the side of the road because he attacked one of them in the back of the car. I mean, 13-year-old who was this big around.
And Judge,
He needs to get in sports.
I didn't know if Judge saw this, but I always stand by my juveniles. But this 13-year-old started blowing like out his nose like a bull. So I'm thinking, he's about to.
Tammy backs up.
I backed up. I saw that coming. I said, I looked at Judge. I don't know if you paid attention, but I said, I'm moving over. Because I didn't want to be in the line of fire, because I thought he's going to knock me down first, because I'm standing right beside him. But he caused a big disruption of our court that day. And we actually, this day, had interns from the Administrative Office of Court, which oversees the judicial system here in Alabama. We had 2 of the employees from AOC in our courtroom that day. So we did tell them that's not every court day. It does happen some, but it's just, like I said, some of the cases will just break your heart, and I always have had a soft heart for them. But I think the older I get, though, I used to think this wasn't so, but the older you get, it seems like you have no filter, and I'm getting there. I'll be 65 in February, and I'm almost there. So I'm almost like the little boy blowing, I'm like, oh, I'm fixing to say something I'm going to regret. Judge Sanders have to tell her before I say it sometimes.
Are most of your cases because they're on drugs, or they just don't have parents that watch what they're doing? Or?
You'd be surprised. Now, some of them are abusing marijuana. It seems like their drug of choice, but we go through spells where we don't have that many possession marijuana charges. Like we'll have a year where we have just a string of them, and then we'll go through a time where the child may not be caught with the marijuana. But we drug test in our court. Some of them will admit to you. Look, like the 13-year-old admitted to me that this was Wednesday, and he said he had last smoked marijuana 2 days ago.
Well, I didn't even know that, Tammy.
Still locked him up. Well, the day that I locked him up on a Thursday afternoon, and when I walked into the police department where he was being detained, he had a hoodie on, and all I could see was his eyes. And I said, you're going to have to take that hoodie off, because this is another thing. If a juvenile, when we're about to detain them, if it appears that they're intoxicated, whether it's alcohol or a substance they've abused, we cannot send them to detention. An officer has to go to the emergency room and have that child seen by a doctor before, and the doctor has to release them and clear them to be placed in detention. And in April, we had a young lady where Mr. Morris, the other juvenile probation officer, we have to lay eyes on the child too before we lock them up. The state requires that like I told y'all, we get called in the night. That means we have to come to the station, whether it's the police department or sheriff's department, because we have to visually see that child, and that's to help determine if the child is intoxicated in any form. But Mr. Morris actually saw this young lady, and he said she seemed fine to him, but when she gets to detention, they said, y'all gonna have to take her to the emergency room. She can't come in here, she's high. But I don't know if she admitted to the intake at detention, so sheriff's department, this was the sheriff's department, had to take the young lady back to Prattville Baptist, and then Mr. Morris went back to the emergency room with them, and the doctor cleared her quickly, and then she went back to detention. But yeah, they don't just go in detention. And when I first started to work, I locked one up that was, I guess she fell asleep or something when she first got to detention. She just kind of like passed out. And I think that I've never been chewed out as politely as Mike Probit at the time was the director of detention. He calls me, Tammy, you have let a child that's obviously she's I said, but she wasn't at the courthouse. She was talking to me and everything, but when she gets to the detention, she passes out, and they determine she's high. Mr. Probit chewed me out very well, but that was about the best chewing out I've ever had in my life. He didn't make me feel, he made me feel bad, but he was kind about it. I didn't do that again.
But was she really high or was that fake?
I guess she was. She admitted to taking, I think the Prattville Police Department had to take her to the ER, and she had taken some sort of, I don't know if it was an amphetamine or something she had taken, so. But she was bouncing and happy when I saw her, so I didn't think anything about it. I mean, I thought, well, she's okay, but needless to say, she wasn't. But,
And a lot of people ask, when does Tammy lose a child? If a child is 16 and they commit certain kinds of crimes, then they are no longer a juvenile. If you are 16 and you commit a very serious offense, you do get put in the jail. So you get arrested as an adult. And Tammy has had many of those that through the years, they end up getting charged as an adult. One thing that's very difficult is Tammy right now has juveniles on her caseload. So they come see her every month, that's their probation officer, but they've recently been arrested as an adult. And they bonded out of jail. Well, the law says the juvenile court does not lose jurisdiction until after they've been adjudicated as an adult. So Tammy is supervising some 16-year-olds coming into juvenile probation every month, and she knows that just 3 weeks ago they got arrested and put in jail and bonded out.
yeah, I hadn't got to that part yet. Thank goodness.
So the kids pretty much knows the system.
Oh, they know that better than we do. Yes, they do.
I remember
They-
when the 8-year-old, I think it was a few months ago, he stole a car and went on a police chase in Montgomery. And then when they pulled him out the car and put him in handcuffs, he said, "What y'all gonna do? I'll be out in a few minutes." I think this was like 3 months ago in Montgomery.
Yeah, they
He was
know.
8.
And like I said, that's what's difficult with the status offenders, but, I see, Mr. Josh is, signaling me to be quiet. Thank y'all.
We've got a little token of appreciation we'd like to give you. So come on around here and I'll give you this, and then we gotta make you work one last time before you leave. So this is a challenge coin from our club. It's got the City of Prattville emblem on the back, and then our Lions International logo on this side here. So we'd like to give you that for coming and talking with us tonight.
I
Tell us about what you
appreciate
do,
y'all
and we'll look right
inviting
there and get a photo.